Hey friends, I was kind of thinking this morning about where our impulse to create or our impulse to do whatever work we feel inspired to do comes from. And I was sort of recognizing, I think in myself and in the people around me, in a lot of ways, our lives are so stable and incredibly abundant. That doesn't mean we don't have problems, and it doesn't mean those problems aren't real. It doesn't mean it's not real challenges to wrestle with. But on some level, there's also a kind of, if we think about the privilege of being alive today, everything we have at our disposal, is kind of remarkable. And action is often, not always, but often driven by a sense of scarcity, a sense of lack, right? Especially if we're sort of in the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or whatever scale you want to use to sort of measure the security of life from a kind of foundation of sustenance, just being able to feed ourselves, shelter ourselves, procreate, continue the species. Little by little, we get up towards needs that are less fundamental to life, and they become more expressions of consciousness. And something that I've observed, both in myself and in other people, is a tendency when we get to that, to the creative, to the point of creation, the moment of creation, the impulse of creation. It's tempting sometimes to manufacture a feeling of lack. Because that feeling of lacking something will impel us to work. It'll impel us to do something. It'll impel us to create. It'll impel us to strive. And, you know, as far as it goes, that can be a useful thing, except for the fact that this manufactured feeling of lack, or this addiction to a certain kind of lack, survival, I actually believe we can become addicted to our own survival instincts. And then we're starting to trigger them when they're actually not really called for. We don't need to be in fight or flight. We don't need to be in scarcity survival mode. We could just as easily be in abundant, enlightened, endless, infinite creation mode. But there's a kind of feeling sometimes, or at least this is what I've observed in myself. There's a tendency to sometimes kind of go backwards into a feeling of lack, into a feeling of trying to give myself something to work for, something that's clear. Because one of the sort of pitfalls of a privileged life, and of a life that is oriented towards aspects of creation and aspects of existence that are not primarily about survival, is that we have to be pretty alert and pretty awake. And it's a pretty rigorous level of commitment that it takes to sort of stay in the flow of it. It's easy to get lost. It's easy to fall back into a pattern of kind of, you know, survival impulses, survival instincts give us a very clear, undeniable imperative. And that imperative will motivate us. It'll give us something to work towards very clearly. But is that really where we want to be living? And is that really where we want to be creating from? Because the nature of creation is that whatever the drive underneath the creativity is, that's the signature that the product will ultimately bear. So this, if I have an underlying survival instinct that's kind of subconsciously motivating what I'm doing, it's entirely possible that that drive, that survival instinct is actually kind of infusing itself into what I'm doing, and through what I'm doing, infusing itself into the world. There's more of that impulse getting out into consciousness. And so if we really want to create from that place of abundance, and we really want to create more of that space of abundance, then we actually have to do a bit of self-examination and a bit of self-reflection around this, to just notice, where am I coming from? where I'm coming from is everything. Where I'm coming from is gonna, in the heat of battle, in the creation process itself, we may kind of lose track of every play-by-play how our underlying motivation is infused, but it's there throughout, and it's driving things, it's directing, it's like a GPS coordinate that we are traveling towards, and that we can't change unless we are conscious of it and we decide to change it. It's not just going to happen. We're not just going to accidentally trip and fall into abundance. We're going to have to withdraw our investment in our scarcity, and little by little, gently, as much as we can sort of easily and joyfully adjust our orientation. Ourselves a new place to travel towards. And I think this is showing up for me because, I've done a lot of different creative projects in my life. I've done a lot of work, different domains, and the longer I do it, the deeper I go, the more I discover, it's the underlying intention. It's the point of inception of, that's not the right word, maybe it is the right word, point of inception, the instigating impulse that is ultimately the seed we're planting in the universe. And so taking that seriously and really being willing that is where we're coming from. And I think especially for people in this day and age, we just want to be conscious when you're manufacturing some kind of lack, and when we're actually kind of giving in, letting the unknown be okay. And seeing what we find. Thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate you. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.